We started on this topic roughly in 2005 or 6 with a couple of my colleagues. There were people from information science. I'm a social psychologist myself, and then there were information scientists. There were people from industrial engineering and people from cognitive science, also psychology, to be more specific. And we sort of like just around the idea and all that time, going back that 20 years, the whole phenomenon of knowledge work, it was in a constant flux. It was because the internet became more available. Actually, sort of like entered the sort of like a maturity of the becoming a tool for everyone. Also, communication technology in more wider, and also whole world became much smaller. Somehow we entered this starting point in our still very small research group of couple of scholars that this might be something worth to do more thorough research. And in today, I sort of like I'd like to give you brief overview about the factors. This is based on our research project or research findings, and of course personal findings too, because scholarly work is also much about working with information. So today I have sort of like quite a brief agenda, and if you have any questions, feel free to just interrupt me, not rudely, nicely, making some kind of course, rude interruptions are okay, especially if I'm talking nonsense. But brief mapping on the topic. Then I'd like to highlight some issues by our recent research findings about how to augment people with technology. That is a quite hot topic currently because of in general it's called how AI can be leveraged knowledge work or knowledge related processes. I have done a sort of like lots of methodological studies, and I have a sort of like some kind of like a background also with the statistics. So it's about how to apply certain methods on certain kind of data. It's not a sort any kind of silver bullet, but if it's a very well fit, it can suit. And from that I have a sort of like a short wrap up, and then I, of course, if you have any other questions. So before I leave stage for Henry, I'm very happy to reply to you. So the first one with generally with the knowledge work is that it's a sort of like a quite difficult work environment, because the inputs for refining process are somehow abstract. They require expertise, so that the person working on information can put it into context, understand the content, and also be able to analyze it. Second point is that within the highly digitalized environments, it's possible to share tasks. It creates unique opportunities to work with your peers, and also it creates excellent opportunities to build extended organizations around some kind of work problem. So very often there's a sort of like a core people working on certain problem or certain process, but they have to be able to collect, infiltrate information from outside, and also they need to communicate it. On the other hand, there might be sort of like because world is quite complex, they have to also in some occasions be able to ask for additional information or ask for help with certain problems. So our sort of like a starting point with this whole information ergonomics was that it's a sort of like a dealing with knowledge related problems, and also trying to remain sane during what's happening. Sort of like most of people sort of like find themselves in this kind of situations before their adulthood. When they try to deal with schoolwork, there is a sort of like lots of information they have gathered. There are group work they have to communicate. Sort of like in traditional setting, there is some kind of like a steering mechanism in school that's teacher. In traditional so-called office setting, that might be the sort of like a work supervisor, but this kind of work setting has become a bit obsolete in sense that it's not very efficient, and sort of like the organizations are quite shallow now. There are lots of experts on certain domains, and very few people to supervise their work. So that gives the sort of like also high autonomy to people, and this was the one thing we started to scrutinize on. So what does the autonomy causes? For people in knowledge work who are very often at risk for information ergonomics problems, they are sort of like they do simultaneous planning of their work. They execute the tasks. They communicate the results, and very often they also evaluate the results. These causes that there are, and then there is of course there is the physical work environment. Then there's the digital work environment. There's the social work environment, that is organization and people they work with. So the first question in this here is that why information ergonomics? So it's partly because people are not machines. and that means that they have limited capabilities. They get exhausted, and also they might have some kind of issues. So remaining in a good ergonomic state requires at least good self-regulation skills, sort of like a sense of self-efficacy, so people can also assess that can I do what I'm supposed to be doing currently, and also there is a lot of information available, especially what comes to problem solving and problem-solving situations. Very often the problems are not, if not wicked, they might be abstract. And of course, in worst case, they are wicked and abstract. So problems that are almost impossible to solve, and they have no tangible correspondence to reality, at least in the first place. On the other hand, work there might be a high time pressure on work, sort of like very often people are sort of like they have pressure because of deadlines, and deadlines are of course the ultimate milestone in work, and somehow people have also this idea that if they can meet the deadline, it's okay. But because of the nature of knowledge work, the work should have been done much earlier, because after the deadline also the assessment starts, or the results of the work will be implemented, and shorter the time span is, there is more information exchange, there are more communication, there are more reflection. So this causes sort of like a stress to people, because they can notice that, okay, I have like some might be upset if they have 100 emails in their inbox. Some might be devastated if they have 50. Of course, there are these pathological types that are not as stressed at all, even if they have several hundred. So I don't know if it's a sort of like a issue of the personality, or some kind of like a attitude towards work. But very often there are these kind of events that might cause outside pressure beyond control of the individual, and they are very often visible through the for instance email or other communication channels, and how intense the topics are. One thing we have research on has been the communication intensity, in sense that they how people react when they have to communicate much, and also we have research that how they communicate among their peers, the closest people they work with, how they communicate to other internal stakeholders, or maybe external stakeholders. The most difficult seems to be cope with their peers. It means that because there's sort of like there might be not a physical proximity, but there's a social proximity. So it's easy to interrupt those who you know well. It's easy to sort of like first to send email, then if there's no reply in a sort of like a expected time, then you maybe send some kind of like a message or use the chat platform you have in your organization, and then there are still two last results. You make a phone call, or if it's physically possible, you go and try to find that person and sort of like grab that and send it. Did you see the email I sent? And of course, it might be that within the organization there are sort of like a different expectation about the communication span, or also the attention span. But it's also about the individuals. For instance, personally, I hate to be interrupted if I have some problem to solve, or if I have some kind of like a somewhat mechanical task to execute to achieve the task goals. But if someone interrupts me, then I'm sort of like I'm lost quite long. I say several minutes or so, and then it's a question of the self-regulation. So does the people return to the work, or do they check something interesting on the internet? Because there's a most evident threat for knowledge worker productivity is the sort of like the possibilities their desktop gives them. So if you have sort of like only the material you are working on your desktop, I mean the laptop, desktop, or whatever system you are using, then it's easy to return to work. But of course, you have a browser open, and there is some maybe newspaper page, YouTube, access to cat videos, and even worse, your mobile phone is visible for you. And oh, I have a couple of WhatsApp messages. What's happening? And then you have lost your sort of like a work attention for a while. We did tracking on people. I skip this one. Tracking on people, and very often the interruption of work, even if the people reported that we have very good flow, they sort of like self-evaluated that it took a while before I returned to the original task. And then when we had a sort of like a log data on people's desktop behavior, that sort of like a moment that was needed to get back to work was depending on the person, several minutes, roughly like 10 to 15 minutes. And if these interruptions happen constant, several times a day, then sort of like most of the time is spent on sort of meta work, which means that postponing the current task, thinking about when I will do the task that was issued to me, and also communicating with others. And this is also important if you sort of like think about the opportunities ubiquitous computing offers to us. it means that we are quite flexible. We can work asynchronously. We can work spatially dispersed, but still there's this communication component included, and that causes interruptions. Also, this has been recognized very widely during the last years when the sort of like teleworking become more popular, especially during the pandemic. So people were struggling with their communication load because earlier it was quite easy to escape it in offices, and that's also on how physical workspace can enhance information ergonomics, because it was possible that you gather people in a same restricted environment. But what if you do things online on Teams? You can't control what kind of content people are following. I don't want to be a bully or sort of like a spoil your joy of watching cat videos there online, but please return to this short speech. Okay. Yeah. So briefly, this is how it looks theoretically. So there are sort of like lots of sort of like planning in work, sort of like don't even try to read it all. And then there are sort of like controlling and monitoring. So, and it requires a lot of sort of like going through certain meta work phases, and then and actually the execute. This might be. I don't try to sort of like trivialize the topic, but if you sort of like use this as some kind of like a weight for the certain tasks. So only 1/3 in knowledge work is only the actual executing, and because of the human cognition, you don't actually have to sort of like or maybe when you are really in a sort of like between a rock and a hard place, you sort of like wrap your head and now think. But very often the thinking and actually the executing, it goes along the workflow, and most tasks are related to sort of like planning, getting feedback and other, and also the monitoring of the environment. This is a sort of like of course a very rough simplification, but these were items that were reported and also with sort of like surfaced when we analyzed our tracking data gathered among the knowledge work. So this is sort of like how it should look like. So we have a technology, we have an infrastructure, we have a social aspect, and individual. So of course the technology, it can be easy to use. Currently, I think that the sort of like the usability of technology is no longer an issue. User experience might be the issue. So they don't work like you want, for instance, if you are working on certain information system, that you have to do so-called silly stuff in order to achieve something. Or but if they are straightforward and they are not intended for larger audiences, then there might be so that there's only one way to do it. So that's one issue. Then the infrastructure. So in general, this reflects to the whole sphere of work. So do you work at home? Do you work in a open space office or shared environment, or how, and what kind of expectations there are? Is there proximity required, and how things work at the workplace? But the social and individual are the most difficult. There are sort of like individuals, they have habits, and then there are in social environment, there are sort of like dictated norms. So someone has decided that this is our process, this is how we do it. But then there are clash between the habits and norms, and then it creates conventions. So people are clever, and of course the cleverness spawns from that people try to be resource efficient, or someone might say that people are a bit lazy, but I have thought that it's because they try to be resource efficient in sense that they want a maximum impact on minimum effort. And if the norm requires you have to do silly things, or you have to do you have to execute processes that seem somehow stupid or useless, very often they are forgotten, and because the people have their sort of like a personal ways of doing. In normal knowledge work, this is not problem. Of course, there has been a lot of research that what comes to the information and data security issues, the most important cause for deviations in security are because of the individuals have not done as they were supposed to do, but they have somehow tried to bypass the procedures. So it somehow underlines the point that normative environment and socially agreed norms are important. If there are socially constructed conventions that might affect some kind of issues, they might be bad habits in communication. They might be bad habits in how people start to play table, so-called ping pong with their tasks. So if they want to get rid of something, they just put it forward. They ask comments from someone, and then they have a free time in their work. And when someone returns it, then they think about, now maybe the issue is solved and someone has corrected. So what I briefly tried to describe was these challenges. So work has become fragmented. There are interruptions. Autonomy of individual workers is higher, and also the issue that there are some kind of like a digital literacy issues in sense that there might be insufficient skills, or it might be insufficient self-regulation capabilities, or just that the information load is too large. So it doesn't sort of like it doesn't matter what is a cause and what is the effect, but these really exist. So we did work on we tried to map the what kind of factors affect people the most. We tried to see that how that can be measured. Of course, because we try to do academic research on the topic, we also needed to develop some kind of methods to approach it. So and also we thought that somehow we should be able to provide solutions, or at least if not straightforward solutions, something that could be used as a starting point for develop. Because going back to that definition slide, is the issue of how organization itself defines it. Organization, it's a construct that is defined by the individuals in it. And so in knowledge work organization, very often the people, the workers, they are the most important asset. So that's why the attention should be paid also on how they do. Then how to measure it. So we used 3 different methods. First one was the subjective assessment, sort of like a self-reporting. Then we had tracking the digital environment, which I briefly explained. And of course, it's possible to use physiological measures. For instance, heart rate variability is a quite good sort of like a indicator for stress levels. We have done this in different settings, and if you think about this, there's always the trade-off between the practicality, which means and the how good measurement results you can find, but somehow we find out that of course we worked with the volunteer adults, that they were happy that okay, you can put for instance a heart rate variability monitor on me, or you can track my desktop, or you can track my phone use, and they were also happy to report what they do during the day. But this is a very resource consuming, so it's always difficult to measure it. But somehow this also underlines all 3 factors that are there. There's this people. So what is the sort of like a subjective feeling and of an individual on certain moment? So it's not a very static. Also, there's this technology issue. So at the technical environment, and then there's the how the personality of a person affects, for instance, the how they react for certain items or instances during their work day. So what we ended to was the key issues here. So we thought that because the information ergonomics is mostly issue of fitting the organizational needs to what kind of individuals there are, and it became very evident that it cannot be done so that people have to adjust to organization, but vice versa. When we started our fieldwork on this topic, there was no this kind of digital environments available for people. So there was almost no digital communication. There was almost no social media. There was, of course, exchange of information and also information management and information refining problems, but not to the same extent as there is now. So taking it sort of like to current situation, and it has become more and more evident that the workplaces and even sort of like not work-related spaces, when you do something goal-oriented, there has to be somehow explicitly defined how people manage their information, how they distribute it, how they communicate, and are there any rules? This has been taken even to quite far away. For instance, in a couple of European countries, for instance, in France and Germany, there are even legislation that wants to make a distinction between work and not work. In social psychology, that is called work-family conflict. But you don't necessarily have to have a family, but it's because of the tradition of how it started. But the individuals have to be able to make distinction that what is their work, what is required, and also the time when they can be off. And there are some techniques for that. So briefly, I also use this quite different example. It's from mission control. They are we did research among flight controllers and how they see their information in environment, and it's sort of like it's a example of very specialized knowledge work, and these people have been researched for quite long time, because what is the most important thing in when there are airplanes in the air? It's a sort of like keep them up and let them come down controlled. So avoid any any hazardous events or even the collisions or whatever. But in this mission control, we have this kind of like a optimization problems. So how to present complete information. So this relates also to maintaining situational awareness. The second one is the how to limit the amount of information presented, and and also the third one is the how much information is processed at a certain time mode. So we use the location, speed, and relative position of other vehicles. It's a sort of like a very sort of like a rough simplification, but these were the most important because with this they can put in a queue. They can be sort of like a see that there will be no collisions or whatever, and you can use that sort of like a possibly to also estimate certain risks. So typically there is a two-dimensional visualization on a map, and it makes sense. And the problem with the controllers were that if there are many vehicles visible, then the additional information was sort of illustrated there on the same projection, and if there were lots of them, it was hard to remember what was the most important and what are the relative positions, etc. So we used a sort of like a very simplified algorithm, and also we tried sort of like a three-dimensional projection. So they could see, sort of like see it from above, so-called God's view, and then they could see it from the side. So they could switch with these, and instead of having to calculate or approximate, that was the phrase they used, they approximate what will happen next based on the figures they see. They are very skilled people. We had some kind of like a color coding and sort of like a vectors. So there were the basic finding was that they were quite happy. There were less objects to follow, less analyzing, so they could easily think more about what will happen in near future. So and also if they have to make any critical decisions, they found that it would be easier. So somehow this kind of like algorithmic approach helped, and that is also what happens in normal office environment too. So if you are using a word processor, the word has quite good recognition of words, so it makes propositions that use this word, or it checks your grammar. So it's something that is inbuilt system. It helps you. So instead of that, because then you can even correct the problems, for instance, in your text, or also during the actual process of writing. so you don't have to proofread afterwards and then return to word process. This is sort of like it's similar. So in this sense, it's quite good. Okay, then some wrapping up. So sort of like for information ergonomics, there are some kind of like sort of like descriptives. So how to see what kind of work patterns there are, how people behaving in certain situations and occasions, and what are their needs. And then there's this sort of like a normative or low-tech. It means the sort of like a organizational planning and contracting and also understanding the context of the work. But on the other hand, there should be also some kind of like a innovative IT design. I don't mean that there has to be development for most suitable technology for certain tasks, but I'd like to refer that there should be a possibility to try if the existing tools could be enhanced somehow by implementing something new. But on the other hand, the people should be able to stay in their comfort zone, in the sense that too many changes in digital working environment is one cause for stress too, because it's sort of like gives the people a sense of poor self-control, maybe a sense of being not so self-efficient, and it causes so that they start to adjust their environment instead of executing the tasks. So, of course, development of information ergonomics. I have only these three bullets here, and this is the everything and a truth. So this is a very simple. And also, if you think about having this kind of like an idea that you want to develop, so one question is that what can be changed, how things can be altered. So mostly it's your own working habits, your routines. You could apply methods, for instance, that help you to concentrate. You can sort of like if you feel tempted by your cell phone while working on your laptop, just take the cell phone to other room or switch it off. So then you have to make a decision that okay, now I check my WhatsApp, or now I will message my friends, or it doesn't take and sort of like interrupt you, and sort of like it gives you a smoother workflow. Information and communication technology, it's difficult. It's a sort of like a very often external given, but somehow it can be kept quite simple, and more stable it is, the better the outcomes. Of course, if you are working in testing and developing, then you have a totally different setting. But it's the maybe that kind of tasks are more data acquisition than actually the analyzing and interpreting what's happening. And then organizational habits and routines. These are also quite difficult. In Finnish work-life context, these are not so difficult. They are only very difficult. They are not maybe really difficult. So very often we have a low organizations and there's a sort of like a lots of informal discussion with your supervisors. So actually the workers can also affect these things. But that might be case in different organizational cultures. So currently I'm, for instance, supervising a PhD work on enhancing certain requirements management for certain products in medical industry. And of course, that is a very complicated. And if there are errors, people might die. So that's why there's a lots of control. So it's a very bureaucratic, hierarchical, and then there are sort of like a different sort of like a professional interests. So organizational habits and routines, they really or they cannot be always enhanced, but to some extent. And then when we sort of like started to with these questions that are okay, why and what, and sort of like this is my last slide. So this might be the also the answer to the why and what questions. So firstly, it's about like surviving the workday, surviving the work week, or surviving the year until the vacation, or surviving the whole career until you are retired. For instance, in Finland, there's a sort of like a lot of reports that people are very exhausted, and partly it's because they themselves cannot pay attention on their information ergonomics, or other people, those who make decisions in their organization, they don't pay attention to topic. Also, this is a productivity issue. So the key point is that a lot of information ergonomic problems fall into the category of redundant work. And what happens if you get rid of the redundant work? Your productivity increases. Actually, in a sort of like a industrial engineering sense, it doesn't mean that, but it makes the sort of like the use of resources more efficient. So there might be more out because it's a sort of like a definition of knowledge work is some kind of like a oxymoron in the sense that if you are even if you are replying the utterly useless corporate emails or service or whatever, it's productive because it's your job, but it doesn't increase the output of the company, or it doesn't increase your personal happiness, which should be very important in knowledge work organizations. It's sort of like a same idea that, for instance, the egg farmers have. The happy hen laid better tasting eggs. Okay, thank you.